So today this is going to be part 2 of picking 10 fragrance notes and 1 fragrance per each note that best represents that note from my collection. So if that sounds interesting to you, stay tuned. Hey, what's going on guys? Hunter here and welcome back to my channel. And if you are new, what I do is I make fragrance related content. So if you love fragrances, go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below and also be sure to follow my fragrance Instagram page as well. But today guys, it's all about fragrance notes. Now, if you missed my first part, we did talk about 10 different notes in that one. And I'm pretty much just picking 10 random notes for each of these series, which I will keep on going because I thought this would be kind of informative for some of you guys. If you're looking for a specific note and you want to know how it smells or what's a good fragrance to actually get that note from, this is the video for you. There's like over 100 fragrance notes out there, guys. So I'll take a couple of videos to actually go over a bunch of notes. So stay tuned for more parts to come. But like I said, this is part 2 and we will be covering 10 pretty much some popular notes in this video. If you missed the first one, definitely go ahead and check that one out after this video. But let's hop right into it and get at the first note. All right, so the first note we will be talking about is a fruit. And of course, I'm talking about cherries, guys. Now, I love cherries, how they come across, and I love eating cherries as well. And this fragrance is the best one that I think represents the cherry note in the best way, at least. And of course, I went with Tom Ford's Lost Cherry. Now, this is a expensive fragrance, of course, but I'm telling you, you get a very realistic, authentic cherry note in here. It's like a boozy, kind of sour, luscious cherry. And I think it's done just so perfect, guys. I gotta tell you, I do have a couple cherry heavy fragrances, but when I think of the note of cherry and the best fragrance that represents cherry, it definitely has to go to Tom Ford's Lost Cherry without a doubt. So the next note on our list is actually a controversial, daring note, and of course I'm speaking about cannabis. So cannabis has actually been becoming more popular in perfumery. There's been a couple pretty popular launches with fragrances, and this one right here is by far the best cannabis dominant fragrance that is actually photorealistic to the way it smells compared to any other cannabis fragrance I own and have got my nose on. And of course, I'm talking about Fragrance Du Bois Cannabis Blue. Now, I know what these last two have been obviously very expensive fragrances. You guys said that on my last part, but there is gonna be some cheapies in this one. But guys, I'm telling you, niche fragrances, of course, use higher ingredients, more naturals and stuff like that. So they usually best represent the note they're trying to go after. And guys, this one here, if you're just looking for a cannabis fragrance, like somebody smoking weed, kind of got that skunk smell and stuff, this is the fragrance for you 100%. And I'm telling you right now, this is very daring and a fragrance that I couldn't wear to work because people will think I'm intoxicated, I'm high, and you might get in trouble. So this is the one that you're gonna wanna wear around buddies maybe, or just kind of chilling at home and things like that. But in this one, you do get a sour cannabis note, some eucalyptus as well. It just smells so good. Fragrance Du Bois knows exactly what they're doing when it comes to perfumery, guys. They do also have a cannabis intense, which is completely different than this one. And also look at that green juice. You just get that cannabis vibe from it. So that's exactly why Cannabis Blue is the best fragrance to represent cannabis in my opinion. So the next note up is actually the note of tea. Now, for tea, I actually categorized all the tea notes combined, like green tea, black tea. I just categorized it as tea in general. Now, of course, there's a lot of good tea-based fragrances. I do own quite a few popular ones, but this one here, in my opinion, is the best one out of my collection at least. Now, I have to keep reassuring that for you guys. This is out of my collection and bottles that I own. So there might be better tea fragrances out there, but we're going off what I have, guys. And of course, I have to go with Masque Milano's Russian tea. Now, with this one, you actually get a black tea rather than like a green tea, herbal tea, things like that. I am absolutely in love with Russian tea. Of course, you do get a heavy dose of black tea, which is the prominent player. It's actually kind of like a smoky black tea, which is what Russia's known for is their smoky black teas. What Masque Milano did is just phenomenal, guys. I love Masque Milano's, the 3 I've tried. They always have a story to tell with their fragrances, and I respect that so much. But obviously there's other notes in this one. Tea is the most prominent to me, but you also have leather, huge dose of leather, some raspberry, which obviously when I say those two notes, you might be thinking Tuscan leather, but no, guys. You also get mint, and I'm telling you, it's like a very, very cooling, the most realistic mint as well that I get in this one. But yeah, I had to choose Russian tea for my tea representation fragrance because it is just perfect. So next up is actually one of my favorite resins in perfumery, and of course I'm talking about myrrh. And for myrrh, the fragrance I chose is by Jo Malone. Of course I'm talking about myrrh and tonka. Now with myrrh and tonka, of course you're gonna get myrrh right off the bat and throughout the entire composition as well. This fragrance is a little bit linear in my opinion, but man, if you're just looking for myrrh, you love the smell of myrrh in general, this is the fragrance for you without a doubt. It comes across kind of sweet, very creamy. Obviously you have the tonka bean as well, which is playing an aspect with that as well. But the way the tonka bean and the myrrh is combined together is just done so good, guys. And I've actually never smelled any fragrances quite like this one, I gotta be honest with you. If you're just interested in myrrh, or if you wanna know how myrrh smells like and things like that, yeah, this is the fragrance I'm definitely gonna be recommending anybody that is looking for myrrh, because guys, Jo Malone did a phenomenal job with this one, and it's one of the most popular from the Cologne Intense line for a good reason. I absolutely love this fragrance. So next note on the list is actually a beloved note by many, many people, and I'm talking about iris, guys. Now, if you're not familiar with the note of iris, it can come across a little bit lipsticky, like a makeup bag, because they use iris in actually cosmetics, like makeup and stuff like that. So that's why you get the resemblance, and man, oh man, you guys might know what I picked because a lot of people will know this one for the iris, of course, and I'm speaking about Dior Homme Original. Pretty much the one that probably brought iris on the map back in 2005 when it first came out, so it's been around a very, very long time. And I'm so happy to have the original launch because they did discontinue this one in the United States and pretty much came out with Dior Homme 2020, which is a completely different fragrance, no iris or anything like that, just very woody and things of that nature. This one is so classy, so sophisticated, guys. Now, I do have to tell you, it does come across like a makeup bag, like lipstick, so be aware if you're buying this one, you're gonna smell like lipstick, like a girl just kissed you, something like that is how it comes across. But man, for iris, this is by far the best interpretation for the note. I wouldn't say this is my favorite iris note, but I had to respect it for what it did, guys, and the way the iris is blended in here is just done so, so good, man. But if you're looking for this one, it is hard to find. I believe they did relaunch it under Dior Homme with the original logo on the bottom, but they only sell that in France. So I think you can get them on the discounters that actually transport them from France, but yeah. If you're looking for iris fragrances, guys, this is the one I'm gonna recommend you start off with. So the next note on the list is actually the most expensive spice in the world. And of course, I'm speaking about the note of saffron, guys. So saffron is obviously a Middle Eastern spice. And I think this fragrance best represents that note perfectly, guys. And of course, I'm talking about Maison Francis Kurkdjian's Baccarat Rouge 540. Now, Baccarat Rouge 540 does have a lot going on, but the saffron is by far the main player within the DNA of Baccarat Rouge. It comes across kind of like burnt sugar, a little bit sweet. It smells like cotton candy. So yeah, but you do get that spiciness from the saffron as well. In my opinion, if you just want to smell saffron, and I actually have smelled natural saffron quite a lot. I do get the jars of saffron pure, and man, it smells just like Baccarat Rouge. So I think this is by far the best representation of saffron, and I'm sure Francis Kurkdjian probably used natural saffron in this one, even though saffron is extremely expensive. I think it even costs more than the gold per weight. So yeah, very expensive spice, but if you're looking for saffron fragrances, guys, you're gonna have to check out Baccarat Rouge 540, but you probably already heard of this one because it is one of the most popular niche fragrances in the world. So the next note on the list is actually a very popular citrus note that is used in pretty much almost all fragrances as either a backbone in the opening, as a citrus. But yeah, this one I think is the best from my collection, at least that best represents it. And of course, I'm talking about bergamot. So I had to choose Commodities Bergamot, guys. Of course, it's in the name, bergamot. Now, I think this fragrance is actually discontinued, and I don't believe they relaunched it under their new line of fragrances, which is unfortunate because if we're just looking for bergamot focused fragrances for like summer, springtime, this is the fragrance I think is just so, so good, guys. It comes across very citrusy, very bright. It also has a kind of a zingy tartness to it as well. But man, I love this one. I wore this a lot when I first got it in the summertime. I haven't really worn it that much lately, but man, just thinking about it, I might have to pull this one out coming up in the week because it is gonna be extremely hot. And obviously that works perfect for this fragrance. Now, like I said, bergamot is usually a supportive note that isn't usually dominant in many fragrances. It's usually just as a opening note. and it usually disappears within like 30 minutes of most fragrance that it's used in. But yeah, if you're looking for bergamot dominant fragrances that smell like straight up bergamot, check out Commodities Bergamot. So the next note is actually a note that has been banned in perfumery as far as naturals go. So nowadays you can only get synthetic accords of it. And of course I'm talking about oak moss. Now, oak moss was very popular back in like the 80s, 90s and stuff like that, especially in masculine men's fragrances, because it comes across extremely like alpha, very, very mature, very masculine. And I do have a cheapie for you guys. I know a lot of these have been pretty expensive, but this one I think is very good for oak moss. And of course I'm talking about Geoffrey Beene's gray flannel, the classic gray flannel, guys. I know a lot of people absolutely despise this one, and I can definitely see why. It's very piercing, very sharp. But yeah, you get a ton of oak moss, which I think is the main player with gray flannel, alongside the violet, which I'm not a big fan of violet. I talk about that a lot. And I gotta say, I'm not a huge fan of gray flannel as a fragrance. It is outdated nowadays, in my opinion. Unless you like old school fragrances, you can definitely still rock it. Or if you were from the genre when this came out, I believe in the 80s, if I'm not mistaken on the top of my head. It has been around a very, very long time. And it is still pretty popular. I know when I did a review of this or an unboxing of this, people are still watching that video, talking about it, wearing it. So hats off to you. Definitely rock what you like. But for me, it's not really a fragrance I choose out of my collection to wear, especially on a regular basis, maybe once in a while. But yeah, if you're looking for an oak moss that is kind of similar to what it would smell like naturally, I think gray flannel does a fantastic job. And I can only imagine that oak moss they used in this back in the 80s. Man, I wish we could still use real oak moss, but obviously we cannot no longer. So gray flannel, I think, still represents the note very well. So the next note on the list is actually a vegetable. And of course, I'm talking about rhubarb. Now, rhubarb is a note that isn't used a lot in fragrances. I'm not sure why, because I actually like it. It can come across very tart, very watery. And this fragrance I have in hand represents the note flawlessly, guys. And of course, I'm talking about Zara's Joe's Rhubarb. Now, Joe's Rhubarb was actually perfumed by the one and only Jo Malone, which is just so incredible. I love the collaboration with Zara and Jo Malone. Obviously, we talked about a Jo Malone fragrance earlier, which is a niche house. And she was the perfumer behind this one, guys. So you are going to get a very good rhubarb fragrance with this one. I'm going to tell you that right now. If you're just looking for a focused rhubarb fragrance that isn't really blended with a ton of other notes and is kind of hidden, Joe's Rhubarb is the fragrance for you guys. It is very tart-like, very watery, very fresh, very green. But I gotta say, this one does kind of remind me of like weed or cannabis. It does kind of have that vibe to it, and I'm not sure. Yeah, it's coming from the rhubarb, which I guess can sort of have that quality of cannabis. It is a little bit similar smelling, so just be aware of that, guys. It does sort of come across like that, but not too much, especially on skin after it starts to settle and stuff like that. You are mostly going to get a very fresh, watery rhubarb. So yeah, this is the perfect fragrance, and especially for the price you pick these up at. For rhubarb, guys, this is a no-brainer. So the next note is a note. Once I say the note, you're gonna know immediately what I'm talking about, because any fragrance that ever uses this note in particular always gets compared to this fragrance I have in hand. And of course, I'm talking about pineapple, guys. And do I have to say anything else? Here's the fragrance that best represents pineapple, and the fragrance that pretty much started the pineapple trend as well. Of course, Creed Aventus, the king of niche fragrances, which is, of course, it's known for, guys. And in this one, you do get a very authentic pineapple note, very tropical smelling. Obviously, Aventus has a lot going on as well. It has some smoky birch, some bergamot, some black currant, musk. There's a lot going on with Aventus, but the pineapple is exactly what it's known for, guys. So if you're looking for an authentic, natural smelling pineapple note to rock, or just get your nose on to see what it smells like, this is a fragrance I'm 100% going to recommend you check out, is obviously Creed's Aventus. Now, like I said, this has been cloned 1,000,001 times. And anytime any fragrance, it doesn't even matter if it's similar to Aventus or not, if it lists pineapple, people immediately think it's going to be a clone of Creed Aventus. So yeah, Aventus is pretty much the fragrance that took pineapple over. Yeah, I mean, they did a fantastic job with the note, guys. I gotta say that. And obviously with Creed, it's a very expensive niche house that does use very natural ingredients. So yeah, pineapple definitely has to go with Creed Aventus to represent that note. But that's going to do it for part 2 of 10 fragrance notes. Like I said, if you missed part 1 where we talk about 10 other fragrance notes, definitely go check that out. I'll leave that in the link down below. And then in part 3, we'll talk about another 10 fragrance notes and pick fragrances that best represent each one of those notes. But per usual, guys, leave a like on the video, subscribe if you guys haven't already, and also leave your comments down below of some fragrances that you would pick for all 10 of these notes. I love talking to you guys about that stuff. But yeah, I'll catch all you guys in the next upload. Take care, everybody.